sweeter than a honey bee. Yeah, baby been sweet on me.
Hi everybody, this is Danielle, and I have a couple of beaded faux opals here that I made that are just little pendants backed with leather. And a lot of people on Facebook have been wondering about how to do that. That kind of broad bezel. When I posted an image of this piece, it's an amethyst oval that I set on some black garment leather, and I put in, I hope you can see clearly, there we go, I put in, the main color is this champagne toho bead, and the accent color, I have 15-degree beads that are Miyuki. They're like a purple iris. And for the 11-degree accent bead, I have a check, kind of a purple iris as well. It's very pretty. It accents the amethyst real well. And it looks like little prongs holding it in, so I thought that was rather lovely. So anyway, it's a pretty straightforward process, but until you see it, I guess it can be a little confusing if you're not a bead weaver. Just so you know, I'm doing this on a thinner, with a thinner bezel. You can do the same technique. I have the letter K here that I made in a resin oval shape with a necklace with the same loop and button on it, backed with the same leather. The difference being it's a really thick bezel because the mold that I poured the resin into was tall, so you end up doing a lot more beadworking to get up to the top, do your inlay of little beads, and then start to come out. So you can do this on whatever you want. It's just that it'll take you a lot longer. That's the kind of multicolored one. Here's one I made last night. It's a letter C that I cast in some resin. I glued on an old link from a leftover link from some chain, and I used all silver beads with the same check purple iris and the Miyuki purple iris 15s in the middle, or as the centerpiece. Again, the mold was tall, so I had a lot of beadworking to do for the walls, but it's the same exact thing. So I just thought I'd show you the different ideas. This one I used for my colors. First of all, I made these faux opals because TCBeads out there on YouTube, she came up with this idea of putting cello plastic into a resin casting, and it looks like an opal kind of. It's really, really clever. Very, very smart lady. I decided to make some of my own. These are just made with an old plastic paint palette. So they're a nice round size. They're about, the cabs. See, here's one that I haven't beaded yet. The cabs themselves are about 1.5 inches in radius, or diameter, I guess I should say. And they come out bigger because of the wider bezel setting. However, the colorway that I used is a brown iris Miyuki. It's a lovely, lovely color. I love the irises they have. If you want, it's DB007-TB, if you want the exact color. And I used the purple iris 15s on the inside there. It's tough to tell. It's a dark day. And then for the accent kind of color out here, I got a hank of these really pretty handmade beads they're from India. And for the accent kind of row up here, these are imprecise because they're handmade. I would put them at a 10 though, average. I used all kinds of these little tan, just the tan ones from the Hank, and just went around that way with that color. And that's it. And I used all the different colors for the little bail, the looped bail. So that's that one. This one is, the main color is a sea foam. Yeah, Delica silver lined light sea foam. DB084-TB. It's really pretty. It's like an Aurora Borealis kind of color. And for the inside, I used just some clear Miyuki 15 degrees. They're like a, yeah, they're just clear, basically. And for the little accent rows, very subtle, very subtle. I didn't really want a huge contrast with this one, just so that you could see, you could have major contrast or not. I used some of a heel of a vial that I have here of like a light periwinkle kind of Toho bead, 11 degree. And I made the bail with the sea foam and that light blue. So that's that, and I will show you how to start another one. Okay, so to get started, I've threaded my needle with some black Nymo, and I'm just going to give it a stretch. Just to keep it from being so curly. And I've counted out 68 beads, because I know that that's how many I need to go around here. It seems to work best if your number is divisible by 2 on your first row, if your number of beads is divisible by 2, so that you get the stepping up and all that to happen. If it's the wrong number, then you won't have your step up, and then you'll have issues later on. So that aside, I am going to focus, and I've put a little knot in the end of my thread, and I'm going to go down through the front of the cab, not the back. This is a little trick to hide your tail and your knot. And then I just go back a little bit. It's a little too far away from the circle. Here we go. And then, depending what your preference is, I go with 3 beads. Some people like to do 2, other more crazy people like to do 1. Take the 3 beads, seat them back there where they need to go, and then put your needle down right in front of them. And then you come back up right here so that you can go through 2 beads. And you just thread your way through like so. This is what they call beaded backstitch, for those who don't know. And there you have your first little group. I'll do it again. 1, 2, 3. The only time I don't use 3 is if I'm doing a really tight curve. This isn't a tight curve, it's just a nice arc. So I've seated them next to the other ones, down through. Yeah, sometimes I change to 2 or even 1 if at a time if the curve is really tight, or if I'm out of room or something like that. You come up like so. Pull. And then you go through the last 2. You just pull down. There we go. And you just do this all the way around. Okay, so here's something to take into account. With my previous pieces, it took 68 beads to go around because I was using, I've been using all cylinder beads, and they're smaller. Obviously the sidewalls are flat. So as a result, I'm using seed beads with, the rounded sidewalls for this particular setting. So I'm actually done with 66 beads. There's enough there. And only enough room for 66 instead of 68. So long as your number is an even number, it seems to work out fine. I just thought I would share that little insight with you because I didn't think about it until I was beating this around and around, and I realized, wait, I'm not going to have enough room. So I just went down and came up. I hope you can see all of this. Came up through here. That's not focused very well at all. There we go. So I'm just going to go through these 2 and through a couple more previous ones. And pull. And now, we can move on to peyote stitching, which a lot of people on Facebook have been asking me about. So you pick up one of your beads and go through, skip 1 and go through the next one like that, if you can see my needle, and pull. And that is all there is to it, quite honestly. Pick up a bead, skip this, go up through here. See? Now you're starting to get a weave going on. Pick up 1, skip, go through here, pull, and there you go. I'm going to do this for six rounds of these regular beads, the main color bead that I'm using, and then 1 round of the 15-degree seed. So I'll have a total of 7. That seems to be a good number. There you go. See, now you can get the idea. These check beads are wonderful to use for this because they have such a lovely variety of color throughout. This one's kind of a greener bead than the other. The one previous is more purple. I think it'll complement this faux opal real nicely. And it'll give you a better idea of what kind of loft you can get out of this with this bead for your bezel instead of cylinder beads, because these are definitely bulkier, but very pretty. And another little insight that I will show you about this stitch is that the first row, these beads right here that you've added, actually metamorphosize and become 2 rows. So, I know that sounds odd, but, because it kind of is, if you go back to what we've already woven, to count how many rows you have, you go up on a diagonal. So, 1, 2, 3. Even though this is only my second time around, I have 3 rows. So there you go. I think that's the reason why the number of rows for your foundation row, or number of beads for your foundation row, needs to be an even number, because it becomes 2 rows. That's my guess as to why that is the way it is. Anyway, I'm going to just keep going. So I'm almost at the end of my first round, and I've got 3 down beads, which means I need to add 1 more. And this is what they call stepping up at this point. So you go skip this 1 bead here and go up. Here, I'll show you better. That's better. Skip this middle bead here, where my needle is, and you go up through the 2 beads, you see. It's just like before, you're going through 1 bead after this one you've skipped, but if you just go through that 1 like this, you've got nowhere to go. So that's why they call it stepping up, and you go up through 2. And now you're ready to start another round, the exact same way as before. Now you're up where you need to be. So, then you just carry on as usual. And at the end of every row, you'll step up. And you'll notice that it'll move 1 bead. Oops. It'll move 1 bead every row. It's kind of neat. Anyway, just thought I'd share that little bit of insight, and I will carry on as I would. Only this time, because we have up beads, it's a lot easier to sort of see where your needle needs to go. So I've picked up 1 bead, and I'm going to go straight through like this. Because now you have what they call up beads and down beads, and those are easy to identify. These are the up beads because they're up higher, right here. These are your down beads. They're nice and low. So it's like you're filling in the gap right now for this time around. So it's a lot, for me anyway, I find this stage a lot quicker. And as you go through your row, you will find that this trend kind of continues, where you have a lower bead and an upper bead and a lower and an upper and a lower. So you just get that much quicker. See? Low, up, low, up, low. So it just becomes a matter of filling in the humps from now on. And you can already see the girth it's adding to the cab itself. So there you go. Okay, so here I am at the end of my rounds. I have 1 more little step up to do right there. And you'll notice with these rounded beads that there's a bit of it's not snuggy to the cab right now, but we will reconcile that with some 15s. I'm using some more purple iris, but in the size 15. Oh no, these are the size 11s. Here are the size 15s. Now these are what kind of make the cinch the beads in a little bit. So pick up one. Here, I'll focus in for you. So here's my thread. There you go. And I'm going to just slip through. Like I said, it's easy to find your up beads. Pick up one, go through the next up bead. And it'll start to snug in a little bit when you get a few on there. So I'm just going to go all the way around. See how that's starting to snuggle in a little more? Okay, so I will go around and do all of these little 15s. So I finished my rounds of 11s and then my round of 15s. There you go. And now I'm going to start my accent color row. So what I've done is I've added my last 15 and then I did kind of what I like to think of as a side step. You can see my thread there. It's coming out of an 11 from the last row of 11s that I added. So what I'm going to do now is, I've talked about this before, where you basically, there we go, you basically think about it like you would in right angle weaving, where you've got a floor bead, a wall bead, a ceiling bead, and a wall bead. It's like a little apartment, I think they usually call them. So that's what I do to kind of sight where I'm going. So I pick up an accent color bead, one of these champagne tohos, and I'm coming out of what would be a floor bead and going through here, through a ceiling bead, and pull. And then you have a bead kind of sticking out the side. So I'll do it again. One, floor bead, wall bead, ceiling bead, wall bead. Go through the floor bead, which becomes the ceiling for our next addition. Pick up a bead, floor bead, wall bead, ceiling bead, wall bead. And you go through your ceiling. There. And now you get the idea. They're kind of off to the side. So you do that all the way around. Okay, I'm at my last spot for my accent bead row. I've got my floor bead, my wall bead, my ceiling bead, and my wall bead. And I'm going to go up. And to continue on in the vein of stepping up, well, I'll go through this purple bead first. Go up through the first accent bead that you added so that you can move on to the next row. So now it's kind of like we're making a little outer, I don't know, like another layer, really, of beads. Because now we're going to start folding down a little bit, and the more beads you add, the more folding down you'll do. And it's going to cover, and you come down to about here, and then you zip everything together. So now what I'll do is take some of my original beads, pick up one, and go through, here's my thread, go through the next champagne bead. Pick up one, go through the champagne bead, pick up one, go through the champagne bead. If you wanted a really strong, hard edged line or stripe kind of thing, you could do that. Instead of going back to, like I've gone back to my original purple bead, you could do another row of the accent color here if you wanted a really sharp, like a really sharp break. But the reason I'm not is because I kind of like the way this looks like it's set with prongs by using such a stark contrasting color. I like how it looks kind of like prongs holding the stone in place, even though it's not a real stone and they're not prongs. It just has a nice look, kind of like the way I did with my amethyst piece that I showed you at the beginning of this. So you just pick up one, go through the champagne, pick up one, go through champagne bead, and you just keep going all the way around, and you see that we are building like a little collar that's going to go around. So here I am at my last bead for this row. I'm going to skip over the champagne bead here and go up through, doing that stepping up thing. You can see that. There we go. And then you pull. And if I turn this, you can start seeing now that this is going to start wanting to fold down. See? Poof. Just like that. So that's all you're doing, is from now on out, you just keep adding. So I'm coming out right here, and I'm going to go through the next bead, just like so. And you just keep going. You only need to go a couple of rounds, maybe, because this isn't a very high cab, like I was trying to explain at the beginning of the video. There's, the higher cabs, like like this guy. That's a lot of bead working, because it's a good it's at least a centimeter high anyway. Whereas these are not. These are little wee, so you're not going that great a distance. So these are much quicker, and you don't have much work to do on the outside either. So we'll just Taking up a bead, going through the next purple bead, picking up, going through, pick up, go through, pick up, and go through. And while I remember, before I started adding this accent color row, the champagne row, I took the time to cut the leather, the garment leather, because once you start adding this stuff that I'm adding now, it's kind of hard to cut, because you kind of would have to move everything out of the way. It's just kind of an extra pain that doesn't need to be there for you. So what I recommend is taking some nice, so your good sewing scissors, or some good sharp scissors anyway, cut around the outside of the beads from the front like this, and then flip it. I always flip it and take a smaller pair of scissors, like these ones, little guys, and then you just snip along as close as you can get to the stitching. The stitching, obviously, you need to be careful and don't cut it, obviously. So there you go. There's the stitching. I think you can see it if there we go. There happens to be a bit of sunlight to help me. So there's your stitching. And that's about as close as you can get. You want it so that when it's all trimmed, you don't see it from the front. I mean, I should have shown you that before I started adding all these extra layers, but you shouldn't be able to see your leather on the front, from the front, and you'll be fine. So that's my 2 cents on that. So do trim prior to adding this, starting to add your outer fringe of beads. Well, not fringe, but outer collar, I guess, of beads. That's why I think of this as like a double bezel, because you're going up and then coming back down over top of everything. So it's like you're doing it twice. And the thickness of your bead that you're using is what's going to determine the loft from the cab itself and the kind of girth you're going to get on the sides. Cylinder beads, it's going to be a lot smaller. Seed beads like this, it's going to be bigger. But that's okay. And you can use a combination. You could use some, because you don't really see these beads, what I've done in the past is I've just taken some junk beads that I don't have a purpose for anymore, but they're the right size, and I've woven with that up to kind of the last couple of rows, and then carried on and used the good, quote unquote, the good beads that I really want to be visible or highlighted on the outer half, I guess, of this bezel. I have done that in the past when I've had a certain type of bead where I don't have a lot of it, or something. Like with this one, I did that. On the inside, I can't show you because it's all zipped up now, but on the inner layer, the first layer of the bezel, I used the same beads, but mostly the blue ones, because I have this kind of tutti frutti mix of beads that have a lot of blue. These kind of blue beads like that one there, but not a lot of the red, and the red is what really makes it punchy. So I kind of saved all of the reds for the outside, and I happen to have a little bit of a white. These are white Tohos. They're a nice kind of pearly white. I had a few of these left, so I thought Okay, well, I'll just use that as my accent row in the middle there. So that's, something to bear in mind. If you want to use, like, how Toho has those really beautiful vials of beads that are smaller and they're, like gold or silver, save those for the outside. Don't worry about covering them under this, because that would be an expense that you wouldn't necessarily want to have. So that's another little tip. But I happen to have a lot of these beads. I bought like a million hanks of them. I've gone around a couple of times, and I think we're good. In my travels, this bead turns out doesn't have a big enough hole, and I found an extra scrap of thread. I just thought I'd share this little thing with you. I keep a bag of old beads that don't have big enough holes, and scraps of leather that I've cut away from things, some beading thread, just whatever I've got kicking around that would otherwise be garbage, because what I like to do is save it and keep it as inclusions for resin casting. So I can, I don't know, cut up this thread and throw it in a casting, and you've got some interesting stuff saved instead of thrown away. So I just thought I'd share that with you. Anyway, that's beside the point. I've gone around a few times. How many times? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that seems to be enough. You only really have to come down to kind of the last two, or first two, I should say, rows. There we go. So now what we're going to do is zip together the two parts. So if I'm coming out here, out of this bead, I'm going to come down through this other bead right kind of adjacent to it and pull. And that will kind of lock them together, and it'll look like one continuous piece. So again, from the bottom, I'm going to go up to the next down bead from the last part, and then you go through, not the two beads, but just the one, and then go up and catch the next. Catch the next down bead from the top layer. And as you cinch together, you'll see it's seamless. You won't see that there's a joint at all. It's just like any zipping that you do with peyote. You're just joining together two sides, really. See? Like that. And pull. And that seats everything where it needs to go. And you do this the whole way around. And to sort of reinforce, what I like to do is, when I'm finished, I like to kind of tie a couple of half-hitch knots and weave up a little bit into sort of what looks like the center of the weaving, and then you can begin your veil. So there we go. That's not going anyplace, but I still have a little ways to go all the way around. You can just kind of have just pull and see where you are if you've lost track. But that's all you gotta do. Find your down bead, and then another down bead. Whoop. Yeah, about halfway done already. Okay, so I'm going to just finish this real quick, and I will be back. Here's the finished one that we just worked on. It's all done. Here's the difference. It's all the same process, but see how much bigger this one is? Because of the round sidewalls. That's why. And that's why this one appears to have, it appears smaller. It's not. And here's the cab. The rise of the cab is much higher than on this one. So there you go. There's 3 colorways. Really icy, kind of warm with the browns, the irises and stuff, and the violet that's got a really high contrast accent row in champagne for a bit of warmth. And yeah, this one's mid-temperature, I would say. This is the warmest and this is the absolute coldest. So depending what your skin tone is and your eye color and all that would affect which palette you chose for yourself. So, and there's infinite possibilities for how you can do that. So anyway, there you go. I've got a couple more videos in the works, but for now, that's what I've got. That's what I've been up to the most lately, is doing that very thing. So I will talk to you very soon. Bye.
Sweeter than a honeybee, yeah, baby been sweet on me. Sweeter than a honeybee, yeah, my queen bee. Oh, she rock me to my soul. Ooh, love me to my soul. Oh, she rock me to my soul. Ooh, she rock me to my soul. sweeter than a honey